Welcome to the Mission Field Media Podcast. My name is Brandon Hartung, and I use media to tell the stories of ministries and missionaries that are having an impact for the kingdom of God all around the world. This episode is sponsored by Club 1040. You can check out all the amazing things they're doing, like planting churches, planting Bible schools, raising up leaders in the Middle East, all kinds of amazing stuff by going to their website, club1040.com. I highly recommend it. So don't forget to subscribe to the Mission Field Media Podcast and find us on all the popular social media apps like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and you can watch video of all these interviews on our YouTube channel. In this episode, we are talking to missionary Julie Beemer, who is joining us from Lebanon via Zoom. And we just have an awesome conversation about all the things that they have going on with Club 1040, but also just how she got into missions and some of the miraculous God stories she's experienced living the adventurous life of a missionary. So without further ado, let's go to the World Wide Web of Zoom and this interview with Julie Beemer. So we are joined here with Julie Beemer of Club 1040. Thanks for joining us today on the Mission Field Media Podcast.
I'm so excited to be on your podcast. I can't wait to go through all the stories and talk with you today. I've been waiting all week to do it.
Yes, it's going to be awesome. I know you have a lot of good stories. For people that don't know, tell us just a little recap of kind of what Club 1040 is.
So Club 1040 is the name is in the vision. It's club, which is a group of like-minded people that come together around a common purpose. And the 1040 window, many people in missionary world have heard about it, but it's the 10th parallel and the 40th parallel. And missionologists have boxed that area of the world in where the least reached people groups of the world are. So many people in this area have never even heard of the name of Jesus one time. So this is the final frontier, this knife edge of, where we need to get the gospel to, and we get to be right in the center of it all here in the Middle East.
That's awesome. So let's just jump right in. As you know, this is kind of story-based, so I know you have amazing story and testimony and just backstory. So let's just start right there and say, how did you know you were called to missions, and how did this whole crazy thing start?
Well, let me tell you about it here. So I always like to start at the beginning. I won't go too far back, but when I was 5 years old, a man and his wife came knocking at our door. And he did not know behind that door was a single mom. She had just been recently divorced. My little sister and my mom was still pregnant with my brother. And this family, they could have been going on a date night. They could have been chilling. They could have chose to stay at home, but they came to knock on our door and invite us to church. And it literally all started right there. I mean, you can imagine, they did not know what was behind that door. They didn't know that there was a little girl that was going to go around the world and tell people about Jesus. And, it just makes me so happy that somebody took the time to come and tell me about Jesus. How much more important is it for me to go and tell others about Jesus? So that's kind of where it started. And, my mom, she was new to all of this. I'm sure she had heard about Jesus, but didn't know how to act that out. And you can imagine, she was only maybe 23 years old, and stuck with 3 children, divorced whenever divorce wasn't, that common. And this little family kind of took her and all 3 of us kids under their wing. And they took the time to just give us that foundation by inviting us to their home after church, inviting us to church. And that got us started on the route. And from that, my mom started hearing about missionaries going around the world telling people about Jesus. And for some reason, Brandon, she started calling me her little missionary. So, she did not know the power of words like we know today. She didn't know that, what you declare, God takes those words and makes them happen. But, and I don't know whether she saw something in me but she literally started calling me her little missionary. And that's kind of where it all began.
Wow. And then how did you, I guess, what was kind of your first real experience on the missions field, or what made you go from mom's little missionary to, well, I'm doing missions work now?
Yeah. Well, I think even before that, my mom got in that little church and we became, born again. And she started teaching in the little GA, Sunday school group. And she started teaching us about missions and missionaries. And for some reason, I just started hearing these stories of Brother Andrew smuggling the Bibles across, Russian lines. I started hearing about Navajo missionaries that would go in on the mission fields there. And I started hearing the stories as a young girl. Oh, I even remember, a Lottie Moon, and we started saving our money for the offering, for the Lottie Moon offering to go around the world. These little things made such an impact in my heart. So I really feel like missions started way back then. And, I didn't know how, I didn't know where, I didn't know the way to do it. As a young girl, you just don't. But literally, I think those seeds were planted in my heart as a young child. And that's, we're going to talk about this later, but I think that's the reason why it's so important that we tell our children these amazing stories about missionaries, and they need to hear the stories of missionaries.
Absolutely. So what kind of, back to my previous question though, but kind of how did you go from all this build up, supporting
Yeah.
other missionaries and hearing these awesome stories, to stepping out and doing it yourself?
So there was a group in Phoenix that I had heard about, and I was going to college at the time, the university, Grand Canyon University. And there was this group where they were going out in the streets, they were doing bus routes, they were feeding the poor, and you had to dedicate a year of your life to this group. And the Lord, it's when the Lord speaks to you and does something in your heart, it's always mega, and to me, it was just profound. He showed me that scripture in the Bible about the rich young ruler. And, I had been doing pageants for the state of Arizona. I felt like I was rich. I felt like, and I knew I was young, and I knew I was a leader because I wanted to do something incredible for God. But yet the rich young ruler was never heard about again, in the story of the Bible. And I was like, I refuse to be that rich young ruler. And so I went into this program, and literally it's called Master's Commission. And I just started learning how to minister to people. And we did clowning. Did dramas in the streets. We started evangelizing. We started doing youth outreaches in prisons, and everything that your heart would desire to do in ministry. And it started, kind of there. But then I didn't know the next step, how to do the overseas. And so, long story short, I found a Bible school. And getting to this Bible school, you have to remember, I did not have a dad that was, giving me wonderful godly counsel. I come from a very dysfunctional family, a crazy family. A stepdad situation, and my family was so chaotic. But the whole time, it's like God was just directing me, and He really stepped in to become my father. And I don't know how He got me to Bible school, to tell you the truth, Brandon. I mean, I can tell you all the steps that happened, but I literally don't know. He's so good to get us to where we need to go, and He truly does order our steps. And I found my way to Bible school, and they had an opportunity to go to like a 2-month internship during the summer, and it was called STOMP, Short-Term Overseas Mission Program. And oh my gosh, I saved up so much money just for a ticket to go, to go across the sea to Zaire, Africa. And, as a little girl, you are always told, I don't want to go to Africa. There's no way I want to go to Africa. so that was kind of like, I've got to go to Africa. There's no way I'm not going to go. I've got to face this challenge and go to Africa. And so that kind of began the process of going overseas, is that missions program, which is a whole nother story that we'll probably go into next.
Yeah. I remember God's funny like that, because when I first launched out, I used to do TV news and launched back into missions. I did missions when I was in high school a little bit, just got my first taste, which got me sucked in, but I didn't really know where I fit at the time. And then found this beautiful world of media missions, which is so needed now. I mean, you're not ever going to go back unless we all lose electronics. We're never going to go back to not needing media. But I remember telling my wife, especially, because it's like, I don't know where this is going to lead, where I'm going to end up. And I told, she reminds me every time I go now, but I told her, yeah, I want to go all these places. I really don't care if I ever go to the Middle East, though. And now it's one of my favorite places to go. And I was there earlier this year, and my wife reminded me that I said that again. And now I've been, I don't know, 5 or 6 times. But it's just funny how God does that to you sometimes.
Never say never.
Yeah. One of the questions people ask, this kind of leads into the next part too. A lot of people ask about being married and a missionary and what that looks like on the missions field. And so I guess I want to phrase it in a way that you can kind of tell your story. What's it like to be married? Is there different challenges than being married like in America versus while you're on mission? And then kind of tell your story of meeting Matt and what some of the cool things you guys have gotten to do.
So this is a whole story within itself that I love to tell, because, I was on my way to Zaire, and we were still dating, and Matt had just gotten back from South America because he had missions on his heart too. So he had been going to South America on the same program. He'd been to Central America, South America quite a bit, but he had come back. And he was kind of helping me learn how to, send out newsletters, get everything ready, get packed. And we had the great big old duffel bags, and I had 2 massive, I don't know what you call them, like wrestler's bag. And I had packed everything I could in those 2 great big massive duffel bags. And I got all the way to London, England with those 2 duffel bags. You have to remember, young single girl, 20 something, never been out of the America before, first time going overseas, had $500 to get me through 2 months. I don't know how they let me get on that plane, to tell you the truth. So I had $500, and I, did everything I could to get the ticket money, to fly to Zaire. Had no clue what I was doing, got all the way to London, England. And I thought, I'm going to call my mom and tell her that I am in London. Everything's going well. So, I dropped the pound coins in the old fashioned telephone booth, as you did back in those days. And the money just started going through, plop, 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 suck. It was just sucking it so fast. And I didn't have enough money. It was taking all of my money. And I was like, hi, Mom, I'm here. I got to London, just wanted to, and she started yelling at me, you are not going any further. And I was like, I am too. She says, Julie, they had a coup while I was in the air in the country that I was going to, a massive coup. And she said, you can't go any further. You've got to stop and turn around and come home. So I was like, I am still going on. Nothing's going to stop me. I'm on my way. So I went up to the desk for the next, place to go to. And the lady said, I'm sorry, but you're not going to be able to go there. They've had a coup in the country and all flights have stopped. I was devastated. You can imagine what that was, just the feelings. And this one lady in all of Heathrow, and those of you who have flown through Heathrow know how massive Heathrow is.
City, yeah.
It's like a city within itself. And she told me, she says, this is what I recommend. I will get you on the flight to go back tomorrow, but you need to go to this hotel and it's about an hour away by bus. She says, get there and then come back tomorrow and then, we'll put you on the flight. I went and grabbed those silly duffel bags, hiked them on my shoulder because Matt had taught me how to hike them on my shoulder. And I took off, got on the double-decker red bus. I literally drove across London, who knows where at the time, landed in this hotel that was eating all my money. And I sat down on the bed and the phone rang, Brandon. You will never guess who it was. Matt had called the one lady in all of Heathrow, and somehow he found me and he found the hotel. And literally, when I sat down on the bed, the phone rang and I picked it up. It makes me cry to this day because it was just so impactful. And he says, come home and marry me, and I will take you around the world. And I will let you preach all around the world. I will never forget that as long as I live. And so that was kind of like his marriage proposed to me.
Was he down on one? Was he down on one knee on the other side of the phone?
I have no idea. But the fact that he was able to find me out of all of Heathrow, and it was really a true miracle. But that's kind of like our love story. And literally, from the time we got married to even today, as I'm sitting here, it has been an amazing adventure. Obviously with every challenge that has come against mankind all across the world. We've lived in England, we've went to Egypt, we've lived in Nigeria, Africa. Now we're living in the Middle East, and you can imagine all the things, in fact, story after story. But together, we've noticed that just being together, being a team, being in unity, God has been able to do some amazing, amazing things. We face the same challenges that any marriage faces, but just having the adventure and the purpose behind what we do, it kind of propels us, and just we're excited to wake up every day and do what God's called us to do. Sometimes I'm really, really tired though. Let me tell you, can we do it tomorrow, please?
Yeah. That was actually another question somebody asked, was about like, how do you keep the motivation to, when you get tired? And, it's like anywhere, even at home, you get that, wake up in the morning and like, do I really need this job? Like, do I have to do this today? How do you reset your brain and kind of motivation on the mission field?
Yeah. Well, for some reason, I live to be here, which is so crazy. But I wrote a blog recently that was the only time that I've really questioned being here. And, my kids were born in England, so we were on the mission field. They went with us to Nigeria, Africa. They were with us the whole time. They, right by my side. So I've had my children in every country that we've been in, every country that we've lived in, except Lebanon, where I'm living right now. And I've never been in, I preface this by saying, I never thought that I would fall prey to the empty nest syndrome. I thought, there's no way, I'm a happy person, I'm a go get 'em. We've got missions to do. But literally coming to Lebanon was one of the hardest places. I couldn't figure out why it was so hard at the beginning. I was like, why is this so difficult? And after a lot of time in between and crazy moments and all the things that as a woman you go through, and intense moments between my husband and I, we figured out, this is the first time I've never had my kids with me. And so it was a really hard come to Jesus moment, to say, Lord, how is this going to work? And I literally had to just kind of revision myself, repurpose myself, find my feet again as a single mother. If not a single mother, that's not the right word, but without my kids.
Yeah.
Without my kids here. And so I really so that was a little bit hard. But for some reason, I've been able to get through it. I had to find repurpose, find a new way of living. And now I just try to make it more purposeful when I go back. I live for my kids still. Thank God for Messenger. Thank God for FaceTime. And, we call our kids quite a bit. We're talking with them on the phone all the time. And they keep me going, I've just learned how to do it differently. But that was a really hard time in my life, which was only like 5 years ago. So I'm still fresh. I'm still
Technology has
fresh.
changed a lot from putting in pound coins a million times just to say, hey, I made it. I have to hang up because it's just cost me $20.
Well, I don't know how my mom let me do that all those years ago. She had no clue where I was at, and there was no phone booths. And so today is a different day that we live in. And, my mom never saw her grandkids growing up, maybe a photograph every once in a while. So now I can still live with my children. They're still close by. They're kind of glad I live here. They're able to get on with their life. So they're fine without me. I'm just not fine without them. So
They kicked you out of the nest.
they kicked me out of the nest. So yeah, typical kids. So yeah, but that was a difficult. You just have to keep on going. You have to find that new purpose, and the same with every person. Just get your time with the Lord and say, Lord, what is happening here? What is going on? And just find new purpose.
And that's something else somebody asked about was raising kids on the missions field. So I guess pre them kicking you out of the nest, what was that like, raising kids in another country and literally on mission?
Yeah. I highly, highly recommend it. It was amazing to have, I love cultures. I love entering new cultures. And we entered without children for 4 years, 2 to 3 years maybe. And then we had our son while we were on the mission field. And it was so neat to see what it was like before and after, because once we had a child, we were like surrounded with a whole new family on the mission field. And we were even more accepted because we had a talking point, we had common denominator with other people. And it opened up so many doors for us to have children. And, the Lord, the word is true. He says that he will give you brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers if you do leave your house or home, because literally my kids had grandparents around them. They never, ever skipped a present for birthdays, for Christmas. There was always somebody there that was around me, helping me, even in the birthing process. I had people around me. And the cultural awareness that my kids have now, I would recommend it for anybody. I'm just so thankful that I was able to raise them in a different country with a different mindset, with a cultural awareness. It is an amazing, awesome adventure when you do that.
And then did that have, this is one of the bigger points that I wanted to get to with you is you created a series of books for kids talking about missions. Did your own kids kind of inspire that, or where did that come from, and why is it important?
So the books, the seed of it was whenever my kids were little, Matt would start telling them stories at night, and he would create these fictional characters that would come to life, and they always had a moral to the story. And so whenever we moved to Nigeria, it really hit home, because I was like, in Nigeria, I worked at an American school, and we worked with presidents' kids, we worked with ambassadors' kids, UN officials. All the people that were there were grooming their children to be the next leaders of the world. And these people were not born again. And they had lived in maybe 3 to 5 countries. The kids could speak 3 languages. They had been around every culture you could possibly imagine and could navigate themselves in environments that were, big deals. And when I would look at our Christian children, when I would go back to America, I would think most of them don't even know what state they live in, just there wasn't the cultural awareness. They were fearful of different cultures. They didn't know, what it was, different food. They don't like different food. They don't like different things. And the Lord showed me a scripture in Psalms 112:2. and it says, the generation of the righteous are blessed, and they will be mighty in the land. And I was like, Lord, I want to do something in my generation to help tool your kids so that they can be culturally aware, they can be global leaders, they can have an understanding of what it's like. Most kids will never go out of the country. You know, having a passport is a big deal for people. Most people do not even have a passport. So how can I transport them across the world and let them see what it's like to be in a different country and show them how to use the word of God at the same time? And so what I did is I took our family stories and I had all these photos that we had, you know, old-fashioned photos that we had taken, and I sent them to the illustrator, and the illustrator took our family stories and drew the actual pictures. So my books are loosely based on the stories of my family. And I say that because it's Around the World with Matt and Lizzy. Lizzy is my daughter with my personality, because my daughter is very steady and Lizzy's personality is kind of crazy. And then the dog Bentley is my son. So that he's the character of our family. He's the joker. He's the one that does all the fun stuff. So he got to be the dog in my books. So these are tools to help parents take their children around the world so that they can become global leaders. And, you know, they learn about languages, they learn about geography, they learn about math, currency, meeting foreigners, what it's like, and actual pictures, so that it's educational as well as inspirational.
And how many books do you have? Like what countries are they on? And are you going to be making more? Where can people get them?
Great. So yes, I've created 4 books so far, and one is England, Egypt, Nigeria, and China. And so these are stories of going into these countries, and all of them go in and have wild adventures. You know, one book, we're getting chased by the police as we smuggle Bibles into the country to the underground church. One is getting sprayed on by a camel, sneezed on by a camel as we go in and host a great big conference and minister to a little boy in Garbage City. So really cool adventures to take your children on as you're getting ready to, you know, get them ready to be global leaders in their own ways. And you can get them on Amazon. You can get them on club1040kids.com. That's club1040kids.com.
Awesome.
And any other book line, yeah, that sells them. Walmart.com too.
Nice. That's pretty impressive. So do you have plans for future books as well?
Well, right now, you know, I've got to do one of Lebanon, because we have a character in our book named Rafi, and Brandon's one of his best friends.
He's right
yes,
there.
Here's Rafi. Here's Rafi and his wife. Anybody that comes anybody that comes to Lebanon will
meet Rafi.
Rafi. And so Rafi wants to be the star of the show in my book. So I've got to create a Lebanese book. So
and that would be a great book too.
it will be. There's so many things that happen here in Lebanon, and there's a story to tell. And so I'm excited about telling that story. I am working on a kids curriculum though, a missions curriculum, because everywhere we go, people ask, you know, how can I, you know, teach my Sunday school? How can I tell them these things? So I've created this Missions 101 curriculum all about go and power, connect and send. So it's in the works right now. It'll be out probably in the new year, January.
That's awesome. So something I wanted to ask you about is serving in the Middle East, especially, but really anywhere in the world. People, like you said, not many people even have their passport, honestly. But there's also kind of a fear of leaving the safety of the United States. Let's be honest, you can get killed outside your own front door, or driving to work, or look at Chicago or some of the other issues in the United States. But there's still this thing, especially if you never left the country, of if I leave the country, that's dangerous. And where you serve, especially in the Middle East, I think there's an extra little layer of people thinking you're really in a dangerous place. So does that ever cross your mind, or does it play into what you guys do? And have you ever been in a scary situation that you've had to like, okay, God, this better be you, or I don't know what's gonna happen, but I'm in it now. So
Oh, I mean, okay, so this is where the stories begin. But you know what, the biggest thing I always want to say is, safety is when you're in the will of God. So the will of God is the best place to be. And I know that if I'm not in the will of God, that's where it's not going to be safe. So I'll tell you something funny is whenever I tell people that I'm from America, one of their questions is, it's so scary over there with all the things happening. Are people safe? So they asked me the same question about America, with the guns and all the situations that are happening, the protest after COVID. So their question is the same. And I always laugh whenever they ask me that, because I'm like, oh, if the Americans knew that you're asking that, they would be like, oh my gosh.
yeah, I think American news probably travels the rest of the world more than any other news.
Well, and I think that's the same with any news, is you always get the hot spots, right to your television. And, you can be in the rest of the country and those situations aren't happening. So people in America need to realize that is they always just focus on where the hot spots are. And those are usually the capital city in a part of the area. Not always, but many times that's what I found. But there is a level of, not safety whenever you do go over into different places. But from the time I've moved to every country, there's always been major situations that have happened in these countries. And so when we moved to the UK, there was a great big IRA bombing that we were supposed to be going into the city that day, and I just couldn't get my act together. I had my son was trying to pack his diaper bag, and it just kept on, like I couldn't get it together. We finally got into the city and it was all roped off, and we thought, oh, they're having a parade. We had no clue what was going on, and we had literally missed an IRA bombing by like an hour. So that was the UK. Going into Egypt, the Arab Spring was happening. And so, we were chased by police. You had to be so cautious because they were wondering why we were there. So that was another situation that we faced. Going into Nigeria, I worked just about a mile down the road from the United Nations building in Abuja. And many of you will remember that the UN building blew up. And I literally was sitting at my desk whenever I heard that bomb blast go off. And I was working at the American school, and I had to be the one that called to find out if their parents were still alive. We had to deal with trauma that was going on with that. So, and there was constant bombings that were going on. In fact, whenever I was living there, it was probably one of the most it was a crazy time in that country. In fact, even the Nigerians were shocked at the things that we were having to face. There was bombings going off everywhere. There was riots in the city. There were situations happening there. And then, as you know, Brandon, because you were with us here in Lebanon, there was a massive, probably one of the world's largest blast, non-atomic blast in the world, and that was with the Beirut blast. And our home exploded, the windows shattered, cut our dining table in half. So these are all situations everywhere we've gone. In fact, working in Turkey, we just were experiencing a massive earthquake that was probably one of the largest earthquake, killing probably over 1 million people there. And we felt that all the way here in Beirut. That's how we found out about it. So crazy things are happening all over the world. The only difference I think is that over here, you don't have the automatic police coming in to help you. At least that there's somebody that's going to help you in the States. Here, you're not too sure what's going to happen, and things go quickly they can go crazy very quickly overseas. And especially here. In fact, a couple of months ago, a missile flew right by our house. I literally thought it was outside my window. To hear that put me and gave me such an awareness of what people face whenever, like in the Ukraine and, in the country south of us, in country all around that's surrounding Lebanon. It really brought it home. I've never heard a missile, and that missile was, my whole house shook. In fact, we literally almost fell out of bed because it was that powerful, going over right near our house. So safety is an issue. You always have to be vigilant. You always have to be aware. There's so many things that we do now that I can't even mention the names of where we go or what we're doing. Even right now, I can't say certain countries' names because of the security issues. Can't show faces of all the precious, precious people that we minister to and get to meet. We just have to be so cautious.
And so does that ever make you, I guess, a little weary of saying, do I keep going forward in this, or is it worth the danger of being involved or close to those situations?
Well, so I have to know that I'm supposed to be here. I have to know it, not just because my husband said so, but because I know. And, we've made an agreement. Our kids know, that we want nothing else than to do what God's called us to do. And there is safety within that. But if anything ever happened to us, we do know that that's a risk that we're taking. But we wouldn't want to do anything else. We wouldn't want to do, and we love the adventure of it all. We always dream that we're a spy in a different country doing God's will, so we make it exciting. So it is an adventure. There are risks involved. And there is a fear factor. I think about my kids, and I think, I need to make sure that I've got all my ducks in a row to make sure that they're taken care of. But for some reason, you just keep on doing what God's called you to do, and you enjoy it and know that He's with you. He's got angels. There's so many times I can tell you angels. In fact, this might go into another story, but one time I was driving down the road, and I was in it was like a a Nissan Armada. So it was a pretty big car. And I came up to a stoplight. The police told me to pull it over. And so you can't just run off. So I just pulled it over. And while he was talking to me, he said, roll down your window. So I was speaking with him. While he did that, another policeman went to the other side of my car, stuck his hand into my window, opened the door, and got in the car, and he told me to drive. So I drove down the road, and obviously I'm not going to go too far. And so I just pulled it over on the side of the road, and I just said, and I'm a little bit dizzy and naive, but man, I turned into a fierce woman all of a sudden, crazy American. And, I was just like, what is happening here? And it made me so angry, Brandon, that they had done that to me, because I had this little flyer in my middle of my console, and we always did the consoles with, Nigerian faces. And it was talking about a children's program that I had just helped to, organize, conduct, paid for. And, they were being angry with me, and they were saying horrible things to me. And I showed them that picture, and I says, I have come all the way to this country to help you and to take care of your children. And, I went on, and I said, is this how you treat me? I was like, whoa, where did that come from? And, obviously it was just the Holy Ghost rising. Yeah. I was like, who is this woman, and where did she come from? And I'm sure they thought, man, we've got a crazy American woman. Should we have done this? But I said, how can you do this to somebody that is coming in and taking care of your children of this nation, And they just started going off, and kid you not, Brandon, I had no money in my purse. I had no money in that car. I had no money, and I had looked for money because obviously all they wanted was money. And had opened up and looked again, and I looked in my glove compartment one last time because they were threatening me. And I found a white envelope that was stuffed in the very bottom. And in that envelope, there was money. And finally, I was able to give them some money so that they would leave me alone. And I don't know where that money came from. To this day, I really believe it was a miracle, because that was the only way I was going to get out of there, is if I would pay them something. I had nothing to give them. I had nothing. And like I said, I had that picture in the console. So I had looked in the console, no money anywhere. And I believe to this day that God put that money in there so that I could get out. His angels were working hard for me that day. That's one of the many stories that I can tell you of situations that arose.
Is that story in your Nigeria book?
No, it isn't, but it should be. I don't want to scare the children.
Yeah, that's true. What stories are in that book? Show us a couple of, for the people watching on video, show us a couple of the little drawings and stuff.
The illustrations are absolutely amazing. But Matt and Lizzy, you can see how wonderful they are. They go into Nigeria, and it's real pictures of us going in, and we meet the Puff Puff girl. And I love this story because I tell the children all about the Puff Puff girl and how we met her that day. And she couldn't go home until all the Puff Puffs were sold. And we were able to buy those, but after we bought them, we were able to tell her about Jesus. And you know, children around the world from different religions, they'll never get the opportunity to hear about Jesus until somebody tells them. And we were able to tell her about Jesus that day. And we told quite a few other, but this is where Lizzy is afraid of the mosquitoes. And God showed her the word about, I won't worry, I won't fear. My Bible tells me you're near. Thank you, God, you heard me pray. So keep mosquitoes far away. Well, kids do get scared of mosquitoes, so I have to be careful.
So. I've slept under a few nets in my day, so I'm sure you guys have too. Obviously, kids get inspired by these books and every other way, like happened to you, just hearing stories from missionaries. They're growing up. Like, what's your advice to them? Maybe they're thinking about missions, or maybe I'm called. How do you know that you're called, and what's kind of your advice for like kind of first steps for them to take?
Well, we always advise every teenager should go on the mission field at least one time. Every person should have the opportunity to go and see what it's like to live in a different country and to meet people. It changes your life whenever you go and get to meet a person from a different country. So that's just straight off the bat. We also tell people, especially children, children need to hear the voice of the missionary. You know, whenever they hear the stories, I could go in there and talk to them and demonstrate, and they just come alive because God has made every child with a heart that wants to do something significant for him. And I think well, it's true. Psychology tells us that children between the ages of 3 and 12, that is the most formative years of their life. And if we can show them about how to evangelize, if we can show them about telling others about Jesus, that will be foundational for the rest of their lives. So how important it is for them to hear about the voice of the missionary, and that they can have an opportunity to go around the world and tell people about Jesus, no matter what they do. But, you know, Matt and I, we did not know how to get on the mission field. We knew that we wanted to go on the mission field, but that step is just like, how do we do something like that? And so somebody had told us this advice, and it's probably the best advice I've ever heard. And they said, if you don't know what to do, find somebody that is doing what you want to do and go help them. That was significant, because we found this little missionary that was going into some of the craziest places, unreached areas of the world, and he lived in England. And so we sent him a fax. That tells you how old we are.
What's how a fax for our youngers?
You don't even know what a fax is, Brandon. You're probably born just a few years ago.
Yeah, I'm just old enough to know what that is.
Oh, this is terrible. You youngins. But we sent a fax and we asked him if he needed any help, and he said, come. And so that started a whole journey for us. And he introduced us to the world of missions. And we have made it our purpose, though, to find anybody we can to help them make their dreams come true. And anybody that comes into our sphere of influence, we have determined that we want to help them get to where God has called them to be. And so, find somebody that's doing what you want to do and go help them. And your dreams will come true whenever you do that. I think that's God's way of doing things when we help others.
Yeah, and to piggyback on what you said about every person should be able to take a trip and go experience for themselves. It's cool, like when you get pulled out of everyday life and you're just all the things we all deal with every day, Monday through Friday, get through the weekend, blah, blah, blah. You start being able to, I guess, see the world differently, not even more so from a different culture, but just people and situations. And you're just so heightened, like every little interaction, like in your book there with the lady and trying to sell her things of dough. And yeah, and it's cool because when you come back from that, at least you have this small window. I mean, it's very easy to fall back into all the things you have to do in life, but you have this small window of being able to see like, oh, all these opportunities are around me, even here in the States. Like I just have to be thinking about it and notice it, and pull out of my own blur of a life, all the things we have to do in life, and go, whoa, this is a ministry opportunity. I don't have to have a big tent revival. Like these everyday situations in life are a ministry opportunity.
I host something called Beautiful 1040 with Club 1040, our organization. And we just had literally 16 women come from the UK and the USA. And they stepped foot on the ground. And I always tell them, I said, this is God's you can hear God differently whenever you're out of your normal routine. And every single one of them came to this place and saw and heard God in a fresh new way. And I believe that is what all of us need to do, is be able to set aside a time. And people say, Julie, it's expensive. You're going to pay for something. You might as well pay to go and help and change someone else's life. But anytime that you're changing somebody else's life, your life gets changed at the same time. So it's such a neat opportunity. I would highly tell you to, get your teens involved as soon as they can in doing missions. It'll change their life forever.
Well, and there's throwing away money, which especially as Americans, we do way too much of. And then there's investing money. Yes. So we invest money in retirement and things that pay back, ROI, return on investment, in a missions trip. What a great investment. It could literally change the rest of your life and the lives of people you haven't even met yet. So, I mean, I think, yeah. And what you mentioned right there, Beautiful 1040, I wanted to talk about that as well. Tell people what that is, and because why it's needed, especially where you're at in the Middle East. There's definitely culturally, it's just it's a different place. It's not America. It's not England. There's still little extra harder things to being a woman in the Middle East, and what Beautiful 1040 is, and what made you start that.
So being in the Middle East, in fact, I just had a friend here whenever she came, and she said, Julie, I don't see any women walking around. All I see is men everywhere. And this is, Middle Eastern culture is many of the women are at home. They're taking care of their families. They're cooking. It's not as easy to buy things here. You do everything from fresh. So women have a hard job here. Let me just tell you. It's not as easy. Many of them are working another job. They're also taking care of their husbands. Some of them are ministry, and they're taking care of their churches. And so God put it on my heart is these women leaders, pastors' wives in churches to bring them away. God gave me the scripture, Song of Solomon 2:10, that says, "Come away with me, my beautiful one." And I wanted to be able to have those women come away so that the Lord could speak to them. And so what I do is I have women in the States, they sponsor my women here, and we hold a great big conference for them. Sometimes we go away for the whole weekend and stay at a hotel, and we take about 150. I think this last time, I think my numbers might be wrong, but like about 157 women representing 47 different churches here this last, I think it was a month ago that we had that conference. But here to take those women away and give them something, spend time with them, getting to know them. We've done manicures for them many times, ministering to one another. This time we all did crafts. And that's something that you don't get to do on a regular basis anywhere in the world, but we had a great big craft day and ministered to them from the front. We had a great big dinner and just showered them with, love gifts. And so I always like to say, this is God lavishing you. And then I also get gifts from the States. So I had about 157 bags of jewelry, and I set it on all of their tables. And I said, you know what? Women in America who couldn't come here today, in UK and America, have sent these gifts to tell you how much they love you. And when those women receive that gift, I mean, it's a lot of jewelry, because the women in the States and the UK are so generous, and I just thank each and every one of them. But we give it to them, and they are just so overwhelmed that somebody would love them that doesn't even know them. And then the Lord's ministering to them his word, and we just, I just kiss them and hug them and love them. And it's a really good way. And you know what? Our job is to start Bible schools in these countries. So all those 47 churches have heard about the Bible school. They know who we are. They know about us, that, we love them and we care for them. And next thing they want to know is how they can send their people to the Bible school. So it's been a good way to do that. I've done it in Egypt, and I've done that in Lebanon, and it has always been amazing.
What are what are some of the kind of reactions from the women? Or do you get a lot of people that have never kind of been? I mean, you're putting them on a pedestal. They're the special guest, and it's like such an opposite thing for them. What are some of kind of the responses from the women that you do that for?
If you could just hear what they have to say. In fact, they come to me with tears in their eyes, and they're just so grateful that I would take the time to make it beautiful for them. And, my beautiful is probably not as beautiful as some in the States, because I've seen some knock them out, women's meetings. But even the beautiful things that I do, and the women in the States and the UK help me to do, by providing for that, I try to make it as beautiful as I can. And they just come to me. They're like, I'm ready to go back into my house and make a difference. Thank you for ministering to me so that I can go and minister to my people, my husband, my church, my children. And it really it's like 1,000 times what in the States, that might be something that you're used to, but here it is mega to them. It is a million times, and their gratefulness shows every single time.
That's awesome. So programs like that and other things, this kind of makes me want to get into a different question here. Everything I heard a missionary once recently say, go, or the call is free, but going is not, something like that. There's a lot that goes into missions with provisions and trusting God to provide, and from everything from just the house you're in right now to doing all these programs and stuff. Like how do you use faith and trust that God's going to provide to do all these things? You have, maybe these grand visions in your head, but you're like, okay, God, like how are we going to actually afford to do it? Like, how do you I guess, how do you approach that mentally and in your prayer and just to see it? I mean, sometimes obviously you got to step out on faith as well.
Yeah, big time. So first of all, let me just say, we thank God for Mission Field Media because you help us to tell the stories. And stories are what moves people. Stories make it come to life. And, I could sit here and talk with a million words, but you bring it to life whenever you have it media. So we've thank God that you were able to come over quite a few times to help us tell our story to people so that people can see what they're accomplishing over here. And so that money was the biggest issue for me to face that hurdle. I come from, like I said, a single mom. She was a business owner and she started from scratch. And so you work to get what you get. And so to be able to step out in faith and know that people are investing in me to go and do and be their ambassador, that was like mind boggling. But it all started with this one little lady. She started sending me, well, let me tell you about her and her husband. Her husband was a little Gideon Bible man. And, you've met the Gideon Bible people. I love what they do and how they get Bibles into all the high schools and all the places that they do. But he was a little Gideon Bible man, and she was just a housewife. And every month they would send me this white envelope with a $20 bill inside. And to know that somebody believed in me to send money to me shocked me because they knew me in my youth group. They knew me from church way back then, and they must have saw something in me that they wanted to invest in. And you know what, that gave me confidence to do what we're doing now. And so to know that if they could believe in me and that I had something worth, that they wanted to invest in, it really did something inside of me. And so I want to encourage other people, get behind these young people whenever they go, because it will really make a difference with you believing in them. Maybe you're just do it with words, but a $20 bill to me meant everything. And so stepping out in faith has been one of the biggest obstacles that any missionary faces. But as soon as I knew that God had called me here, and I started getting confidence that, first of all, He's called me, and that there are people who believe in what I'm doing, and that they know that I'm good ground, it started building in me a confidence to start saying, okay, I know I'm supposed to be here. I know I'm supposed to be doing this. And I know that God is my provider. And as soon as I got the confidence inside of me, it's like people started seeing that. And they're like, we want to invest in you. We want to invest in what you're doing. And obviously, many people that know my husband and see what we do, they're seeing that we're raising up leaders in all of these nations. And it's still lasting works everywhere we've been. They want to be part of that. But there's not a day that doesn't go by that I don't realize that I'm their ambassador, I'm their representative, and they can't go, but I send me because I will go for you. I want to be your representative. I want to be the one that goes and represents you in these countries. And I'm so thankful for every person that partners with us. I'm so thankful that they believe in us and that they are behind us. And I know that one day when we get to heaven, there's going to be a line of people. Sorry, crying. There's going to be a line of people that are going to say, thank you for sending me to be their representative. And so I thank that little lady, that Gideon's Bible man and his wife, that they invested in me. And I thank God for all the people that continually invest in Matt and Julie Beemer and Club 1040. Oh, I'm so, so grateful.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I have a little email notification that pops up when reoccurring monthly supporters give, and they're all different amounts. But every time you see it pop up, it's just like someone giving you a little hug almost, it's like, keep going, buddy. We still believe in you. And like you said, it's almost it's a reoccurring
reinforcement of
Yeah, that like you're their representative and you have something you need to be doing, and they believe in you, and man, it's so encouraging, whether it's $5 or $20 or $200. It's like somebody coming in and giving you a pat on the back or a hug, and saying, hey, I'm with you, even though you may be out there who knows where. It's so cool. But that encouraged me too, to donate to other people, even though I don't have a bunch of money, but or I'll come, somebody's doing a fundraiser to go on a trip or doing some project, and I may say, well, I only got $20. Like, what good is that going to do? It's like a drop in the bucket, but I want to be a part of what they're doing. And you know how many people have not given anything because they thought, well, I only have $5 or only have $20. If you all just say yes with whatever's in your hand together, like you're going to do such amazing things. So I'm
It's
always encouraging people to just say yes to whatever's in your hand.
it's those 5 loaves and 2 fishes.
Yeah.
Whenever you give God what you have, he blesses it. And I don't know how he does it, but he literally blesses it and makes it go further. He causes it to be multiplied here. And it's so appreciated. And it always amazes me of the people that give. I'm like, Lord, I know that they don't have a lot, or maybe they do have a lot, but they would invest it in me. It almost causes your mind to go, double take. It's like, wow, thank you, God. Thank you so much for those people.
Yes.
We can't do it. We can't do it without them, and I think when people get that in their heart and they know that, the Great Commission is not going to happen unless people, if I could work here, I would do it. I wouldn't get as much done, but I would work here because I believe so much in it. But literally, we can't work. Visas are impossible. The same, visas that are needed to go to other countries, to the Americas, the same things that we would have to go through here. And so to be able to do the works, it's all the chain. God says it, and I love it about the beautiful scripture. How can they hear unless someone is sent? How can they be sent unless someone sends them? How can we preach unless there's a preacher? It's such a chain reaction. And I love to be the one that's sent. I'm like, send me, I'll go for you. And it's so funny because I get people and they're like, Julie, thank God I don't have to go where you go. I love it when they come and tell me that. I'm like, I don't
I'll
care.
happily
I'll go
go.
with you. I'm happy to do
Yeah.
it. I tell them, I say, put me on your refrigerator so that you can pray for me every day, but send me because I'm the one that wants to go for you. Let me be your hands. Let me be your feet. Let me be your voice. I'll do it gladly.
And I can tell people listening to this, from working with Club 1040, you guys are some of the just top notch people I've ever worked with. And I think that's about everything I've got for today. So I just want to thank you for your time and sharing these stories, and just let people know Club 1040 is awesome. The Beemers are awesome, and we love you guys, and everything you're about, and can't wait to see what the future holds.
Well, I want to tell people, to get behind Mission Field Media. We can't tell the stories, to find someone to come and film and help put it together and edit it. These stories need to be told. People need to see what's going on around the world. And there's no way that we can do it over here without, people like you that come and help us to tell those stories. Jesus told parables in his day, and they are still going on to this day. Brandon Hartung is telling stories in the way that we need to have them today, and they're going to go on and create a legacy forever. And so just like we want to be part of what God's doing in the earth today, let's get behind Mission Field Media so that you can tell more people's stories. Show them what God is doing around the world and how amazing it is. We're on the winning side, Brandon, and you're helping to tell that we're on the winning side.
Yes, well, it's an honor to do what I do and partner with people like you guys and organizations like Club 1040.
Well, I'm so glad that you took the time to be able to let me tell some stories, and I could be here all night.
I know. People will be tired of listening to us, so we will do it again, and maybe get your husband in on one too at some point. So
That would be really good. He will have the stories to the hilt, and he'll remember all the details that I always forget.
Well, you did amazing, and thanks for coming on the Mission Field Media podcast.
Thank you so much, Brandon, for having me. And if people want to come to clubton40kids.com or clubton40.com, we would love to see you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks again for joining us on the Mission Field Media podcast. We so appreciate you taking your time to watch and listen to what God is doing all around the world through these missionaries and ministries. Please remember to subscribe to the channel, find us on the social media apps and follow us there, and tell all your friends about it. We couldn't do this without the listeners like you guys and our sponsors. Thank you so much, and we're looking forward to having you join us again on the Mission Field Media podcast.